The WNBA just got ripped open in the most humiliating way possible. And this time, it wasn't by some frustrated fan ranting online. Legendary USA Today journalist Christine Brennan, a woman whose byline has outlasted entire WNBA franchises, finally had enough of the circus. She dropped a truth bomb so massive, it might as well have registered on the Richter scale. We're talking about documented receipts, layers of pettiness, and a full dismantling of the WNBA's already fragile credibility over their mishandling of Caitlin Clark. From the commissioner's office to the clique of jealous veterans who still can't handle a newcomer stealing their thunder, Brennan's takedown left scorch marks. Here's how this whole storm started brewing. Christine Brennan, who has covered women's basketball longer than some of these players have been alive, decided to write a book. Not a cute, rah-rah celebration of the league. Not a glossy, feel-good coffee table piece. No, this was a deep-dive, hard-hitting investigative assault on the WNBA's biggest own goal in history, fumbling the Caitlin Clark moment. This wasn't opinion. This wasn't guesswork. This was meticulously researched, scorched earth journalism, and the tremors from it are still shaking the foundation of the league. The thing I don't get, Christine, is that in the case of Tiger, and in the case of Jordan, the other players and the league around them, in Tiger's case the PGA Tour, realized that a rising tide raises all boats, and were incredibly supportive of Tiger and Jordan. With Caitlin, it seems like, for whatever reason, she's polarizing. Like she's been hit with more flagrant fouls than any player ever this year. They tried to come at you when you were writing a story and said, don't ask questions about why people don't like Caitlin Clark. But I'm going to ask you, Christine, why is she polarizing in your opinion? Why do people not embrace the phenomenon that is Caitlin Clark? Brennan didn't stroll in to hand out participation ribbons. She came with a machete and started hacking through the PR spin, exposing exactly how tone-deaf, insecure, and flat-out lazy the WNBA's leadership was when the most marketable player in women's sports history walked right into their lap. Caitlin Clark isn't just a promising young talent. She's the generational name, the one who dragged the WNBA out of the shadows and into the mainstream. And instead of throwing her a parade, league leadership reacted like they'd been forced to share a cubicle with someone they couldn't stand. Here's one of Brennan's most jaw-dropping finds. The day after Caitlin declared for the 2024 draft, Brennan called a senior WNBA executive to get their take. You'd think there'd be fireworks, a champagne pop, at least a "we just won the lottery" moment. Instead, this exec compared Clark to Maya Moore. And while Maya Moore is an all-time great in WNBA history, the truth is brutal. Outside of hardcore basketball circles, she never had anywhere near the mainstream recognition or cultural pull that Clark already had before even stepping on a WNBA court. It was the ultimate "we don't get it" moment. From home, like everybody else, and I think, guys, that actually helped me understand as a journalist the fascination, because I've covered a lot over my career and been very fortunate to be at, Wimbledon's and Super Bowls and Tiger Woods and you name it, I've covered it. And I'm so lucky to have done that. And I found myself fascinated, who is this? And everyone's getting text messages from guys who would never have watched a second of women's basketball. Good guys. They want their daughters to play sports. Good people, but just there. And they're texting, "Are you there? I'm watching. Are you seeing this performance?" And that told me something, that I actually was very helpful to be at home watching it versus being on press row talking to a bunch of other journalists. They're like, okay, there's something going on in the country here. And it's, everyone's fascinated and people are standing in line for hours in the cold around the Big Ten, this barnstorming tour. And it's all about a basketball player who happens to be a woman. That was all Brennan needed to confirm her suspicions. She instantly recognized what these suits couldn't. That Caitlin Clark wasn't just another star. She was a cultural avalanche waiting to happen. She was about to tear down every tired narrative about the WNBA being irrelevant, niche, or unwatchable. While league brass were busy making lazy comparisons, Brennan could already see the tidal wave of attention, money, and new fans about to hit. And how did the league respond to this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? They sat on their hands and did nothing. It's almost impressive to fumble the easiest marketing slam dunk in sports history this badly. And here's the even uglier truth Brennan revealed. The WNBA didn't just fail to prepare for the Caitlin Clark effect. They couldn't even imagine it. They were so used to being the back row of the sports conversation that they'd lost the ability to picture a reality where their games actually mattered to millions. It's like running a bakery for 20 years and being shocked when someone finally wants to buy your bread. The incompetence wasn't just operational, it was cultural. The wild part? People outside the league saw it coming from miles away. Reporters, analysts, even YouTube creators had been tracking Clark's rise through her Iowa days, waving bright neon signs that she was a game changer. Her fan base wasn't just big. It was rabid, loyal, and ready to storm WNBA arenas the moment she went pro. But the front office acted like they couldn't be bothered to notice. And the numbers told the whole story. In 2023, the Indiana Fever averaged about 4,000 fans per home game. That's a decent crowd for a Friday night high school rivalry in Texas. Then Caitlin Clark shows up for a preseason warm-up, and suddenly fans are lining up outside 2 hours early, like it's the Taylor Swift tour. Security staff were stunned. They'd literally never seen anything like it. So, how did the WNBA capitalize on this generational moment? Did they launch massive campaigns, flood social media with content, and make Clark the centerpiece of their global brand? Of course not. They acted like grumpy homeowners annoyed that too many people were parking on their street. It's almost as if they preferred being a small pond to suddenly being part of the ocean. I deal with it for sure in the book, and, I think what we've seen is surprising to me, having covered women's sports as well as men's, for the length of my career. And then we get to the real poison Brennan exposed, the jealousy. Her book reveals an undercurrent of bitterness that ran from the top brass to certain players and even some legacy media figures. They couldn't stomach the fact that Caitlin Clark, fresh out of college, was getting more airtime, bigger crowds, and more sponsorship attention than veterans who'd been grinding for over a decade. Instead of seeing her success as a rising tide lifting all boats, they saw it as a personal threat. And here comes Caitlin Clark, and let's say it, and I say it in the book, I'd go into this in depth. A white woman from Iowa in a 74% black league. That's an issue. The book is the first real journalistic look at this entire season and at Caitlin Clark and what she's done and all these issues that are out there. No holds barred. I shy away from nothing. That jealousy played out in the dirtiest ways. Players started taking extra physical shots at her. Officials suddenly missed obvious fouls. Coaches threw sly digs into press conferences. Writers began pumping out think pieces whining about Clark being too popular, as if popularity is somehow a crime in professional sports. Imagine being handed a winning lottery ticket and complaining that the paper it's printed on is the wrong texture. And I look at the way players like Diana Taurasi, Brianna Stewart, Cheryl Swoops with her flurry of falsehoods, Cheryl Reeve, the Olympic coach, Gino Auriemma, really tried to minimize her and were very critical of her. That stunned me. You should be saying, this is great. You don't have to cheer for her. You guard her. You play tough. She's not a victim. She loves to throw it at people. She's feisty and tough out there. And that makes her, I think, even more appealing to so many people. But for this group of people to want to say such negative things and be so wrong about her, okay, fine. It's a free country. You can do what you want. But what she's doing by going into the WNBA, and here's what makes it worse. This wasn't hard to predict. Caitlin Clark's time at Iowa was a 4-year masterclass in brand building and audience growth. She smashed records, sold out arenas coast to coast, and turned casual sports fans into appointment viewers. She had a following that would follow her anywhere. Anyone with half a brain could see she was bringing that wave into the WNBA. Everyone except, apparently, the people whose entire job was to grow the league. Brennan's reporting also uncovers a cultural sickness inside the WNBA. A warped mentality that mainstream popularity somehow corrupts the purity of the game. It's the kind of thinking that leads to actively sabotaging your own golden goose. Instead of protecting and promoting Clark as the face of the future, they let her become a target for jealousy-fueled hits. Cheap fouls went uncalled. Star opponents celebrated when she got knocked down. Certain media voices spun her popularity into a negative, as if the sudden surge of relevance was an embarrassment instead of a blessing. If there's one thing Christine Brennan's reporting makes impossible to ignore, it's this. The WNBA didn't just miss the easiest marketing opportunity in its history. It tripped over it, fell on its face, and somehow managed to kick the goldmine back into the dirt. They had Caitlin Clark, the single most talked about player women's basketball has seen in decades, generating a buzz so loud you could hear it from orbit. And what did the league do? They fumbled it like they'd never heard of the word promotion. The merch rollout? An amateur hour embarrassment? The scheduling? Like they'd pulled game times from a bingo cage. And the marketing strategy? It felt like it was put together by people more suited to running a middle school car wash than a professional sports league. Brennan doesn't mince words. This wasn't just a harmless series of mistakes. This was deliberate, willful blindness. They had reams of data screaming, "This is your ticket to the moon," but they clung to the small, safe, predictable world they already knew, instead of risking what real success might look like. And here we are, smack in the middle of Clark's sophomore season, and the WNBA is still fumbling around like it's their first day on the job. Every time she plays, TV numbers skyrocket. Her jerseys and signature sneakers disappear from shelves faster than limited edition Jordans. Every arena she steps into sells out, with fans screaming like they're at a Beyoncé concert. And yet somehow there's still this unmistakable tension. Like some folks inside the league are quietly wishing the Caitlin Clark phenomenon would just go away so they could crawl back into their cozy little bubble where no one bothered them. Brennan's reporting doesn't just call the league out, it nukes them. She lays bare just how deep this dysfunction goes. This was a league teetering on financial life support, praying for something to keep it from fading into total irrelevance. And then along comes Caitlin Clark, a once-in-a-generation superstar with crossover appeal, magnetic personality, and the ability to drag TV networks, sponsors, and ticket buyers into the league by sheer gravitational force. And what did the league do? They treated her like an inconvenience, like a squeaky door they couldn't be bothered to fix. If you can think of a bigger example of an organization actively working against its own best interests, let's hear it, because this might take the crown. The lessons here go far beyond basketball. This is a case study in how entrenched institutions can be so locked into their old ways that they'll sabotage the future just to keep things familiar. The WNBA was handed lightning in a bottle. All they had to do was protect Caitlin Clark from the petty jealousies, market her talent like their lives depended on it, and ride the wave into a new era. But instead, they let resentment and outdated thinking guide their decisions. It's almost as if they were offended that success arrived wearing a ponytail and an Iowa jersey. One of Brennan's most damning points? How badly the league insiders misread the room. They genuinely believed their brand was too pure for a mainstream breakout, as if staying niche somehow made them virtuous. And the fix? It couldn't have been simpler. Get behind Clark, protect her from cheap shots, let her star power boost everyone. Instead, they threw up roadblocks, acting like their best player's rise was something to manage, not celebrate. And while the league's old guard slept, new media saw the future coming from a mile away. YouTubers, TikTok creators, independent sports journalists, they knew Clark's appeal wasn't confined to hardcore basketball circles. She was a crossover star, the kind who turns up in memes, on talk shows, and in headlines outside the sports page. Meanwhile, the WNBA was still operating like it was 1998, bungling PR opportunities, burying marquee matchups in awful time slots, and proving over and over just how allergic they were to modern marketing. Brennan makes it crystal clear. This wasn't accidental clumsiness, it was almost self-sabotage. The WNBA had the easiest slam dunk in its history and treated it like a problem to contain. Worse, that attitude seeped right into the locker rooms and coaching staffs. Instead of recognizing that Clark's star power meant everyone's paycheck could get bigger, too many players and coaches acted like her spotlight dimmed theirs. Newsflash. It's called a rising tide lifting all boats, not sinking the fleet because one ship has brighter lights. And this wasn't just a missed domestic opportunity. The international stage was wide open. Women's basketball is booming overseas, and Caitlin Clark's fan base is global. She's not just an American sports darling. She's drawing eyeballs from Europe to Asia. The WNBA had a golden shot to plant its flag worldwide. Instead, the league's petty dysfunction, the targeting, the jealousy, the refusal to capitalize, became part of the story. Brennan even details how the hard fouls and trash talk aimed at Clark weren't just random on-court scuffles. They were physical manifestations of the resentment brewing inside the league, broadcast for the world to see. And where was Kathy Engelbert during all this? The commissioner's one core job is to protect the league's most valuable assets. But according to Brennan, she was either completely oblivious to what was happening or complicit in letting it play out. Neither answer inspires confidence. Every time a dirty play went unchecked, every time a ref swallowed the whistle while Clark got hammered, it was a flashing neon sign saying, "Leadership isn't here." Brennan also points out how many clear turning points the league had, moments where they could have shifted the narrative and capitalized. They could have made a public stand against the targeting. They could have launched bold campaigns spotlighting Clark and her top rivals, turning competition into cash. They could have locked down bigger TV deals and high-profile sponsorships off the back of her rookie season's momentum. Instead, they let the pettiness fester and the opportunity rot. Behind the scenes, Brennan describes entrenched cliques terrified of being overshadowed. Instead of embracing Clark, they made things harder, ensuring she had to fight for every inch of her success. And the hypocrisy? Off the charts. The same people who undermine her turn around and publicly brag about how women's basketball is finally getting its due, without mentioning that Clark is the reason why. The cost of all this petty jealousy wasn't just emotional, it was financial. Bigger crowds, higher ratings, booming merchandise sales, all of that means more revenue for everyone. Higher salaries, better facilities, more investment in the league. But too many insiders saw Clark's success as a threat to their personal legacy rather than a payday. And in Brennan's telling, it's often the established names, the older vets, the long-time coaches, the execs, who clung hardest to that mindset. Meanwhile, younger players and emerging voices were ready to welcome Clark with open arms, understanding that her arrival was a win for all of them. The bottom line? Christine Brennan's book doesn't just tell Caitlin Clark's story. It exposes the WNBA's all-time greatest fumble, a moment where they could have leapt into a new era, but instead got tangled in their own jealousy, insecurity, and outdated thinking.